As a creative, have you had an idea or know someone who had an amazing idea but struggled to bring it to life? You're able to think about powerful creative ideas on the fly, but you struggle to execute. It's like the joy and excitement comes at the idea stage, but the execution stage, everything kind of falls flat a little bit. If you've been here before, I know I've been, I know how you feel, I know exactly the moment when this happens, what's going on in our minds and in our hearts. So, the goal of this episode is to help you identify the hangups internally from the perspective of character that may cause you to be unable to execute your ideas effectively. So, by the end of this episode, there's a couple things that I want you to be able to take away. What's getting in the way of you becoming a creative entrepreneur, bring your ideas to life. And you'll also be able to receive actionable steps to help you cultivate and begin to be the person who can execute these ideas effectively and with impact. So I want to start this off with a personal action that I've created. And I was sitting with this and I just wanted to share it and kind of lead it into the conversation. Excitement may plant the seed, but belief is what makes us work to bring our ideas into existence. So I think a lot of times that when we think about bringing ideas to life, we spend a lot of time on strategy, learning new skills, education, development, things of that nature. But I think that as a creative, I think we miss the point of how important our well-being is, how important our soul is, or what it needs to be in order to bring ideas to life. And this is kind of like the essence of the episode that I want to, tap into. I want to talk about, from a character perspective internally, what needs to happen that could put you in the best position to bring these ideas to life so you don't find yourself starting and ending or starting and stopping and not being able to execute, fully and effectively. So reason number one, when we talk about issues that keep us from executing our creative ideas, there's something about you that you don't believe in. Execution begins at the point of belief. Everybody got ideas. But why do you think a small percentage of people execute their ideas and there's a large group of people that don't? Those that complete and execute their ideas know that it's possible at the belief stage and have decided to finish, and utilizing that as the only option. We must believe that we're able to create what we're aiming for and that we actually can do it and do it with excellence. So before I keep going, belief, etymologically speaking, it means confidence. Confidence that's reposed in a person. It's synonymous with faith. It's synonymous with trust. And it's the conviction of truth of an alleged fact without knowledge. So think about how important this is. When we talk about creating something and bringing a creative idea to life. So say, for example, we're talking about an album. If you don't believe in your mind, in your being, in your soul, that this is something that can actually happen, there's something that's going to tend to show up in ways that create a level of self-sabotaging, create a level of doubt, fear, that will basically allow you to not move forward in doing the things that you need to do to complete it to begin with. The belief stage, and I don't want to call it stage more so, I want to call it more so something that we embody. Embodying belief is the first building block that allows us to have the confidence and the courage to move forward in what we're creating. If we don't believe that we can finish, if we don't believe that what we finish means something, if we don't believe what we finish is something that can add value to the world, then along the way, we're going to struggle deeply to finish whatever said creative work we're speaking of. The creative works begin in our mind. We must believe that we have the capacity, the creativity, and the trust within our being to be able to execute these ideas by the grace of God. Without belief, we will work on our creative works, but will never be fully convinced that we can complete it, or at least complete it with impact or effectiveness. And that's something that we have to embrace, because we don't fully trust ourselves and the creative impact that we can make if we're struggling to complete our creative idea. There was something that sat with me about this idea of trusting that we can be the ones that can execute the creative idea that we have in our minds. But if you think about things that you tried to complete before and you didn't finish, or things that you tried to show up doing creatively and you couldn't get to the finish line, at some point, as you're going through this creative process, subconsciously you're going to ask yourself, can I do it? Can I actually do it if there were many times before when I didn't finish? And then it's also like these inner thoughts or these inner emotions that make you feel like I'm lying to myself, believing that I can finish something when I haven't finished a lot of what I decided to do in the past. So getting over this self-sabotaging behavior has to start at the level of belief, because that is going to be the anchor that's going to allow us to be able to go through and finish where we started. Lack of belief leads to poor execution. Even if we do finish our creative works, belief helps us create it with excellence, because we embrace and accept that our true creative prowess means something, and the value that it brings to those who serve means something as well. So, a study from the Harvard Business Review, it reports that execution failures are 3 times more common than idea failures. We don't struggle with lacking ideas, we struggle with execution, which could also in most cases be an indication of what we truly believe about our ability to produce a well thought out and well executed creative project that's impactful and helps solve the problems of other people. So what are some of these roadblocks that get in the way that attacks us at the level of belief, that has us in a position where we don't necessarily believe that we have the ability and the capacity to complete our creative works? Number 1, fear of rejection. Feeling like people won't accept our creative work nor appreciate it to its fullest potential. The etymological roots of rejection is a refusal to accept, to set aside. It's just in our human nature that, that we want to be desired to, we're desired to be accepted. And we want to be received by people for who we are. So when we're rejected, and it's something that's personal when it's something that we feel, let me repeat that. When we're rejected and it's tied to our creative work. So say, for example, a person, has a criticism about what we've produced, or they say something about what we produced that we don't like, or they say something about what we produced that, something that it's flawed in some way. What does that do? If you have the idea of rejection in you, you feel like you're being rejected instead of it just being a simple criticism of the creative work. So to avoid the potential of feeling rejected, there's times when most people will self-sabotage themselves and not complete the work to avoid fear of others rejecting them to begin with. So to even avoid the whole rejection process from the beginning, there's this self-sabotaging behavior of this tied to the fear of rejection that will make us basically not even move forward. Because if I don't complete it, I can't present it. And if I don't present it, then I reduce the risk of being rejected, which is ultimately us rejecting ourselves. So that's why it's very important to understand that at the belief stage, the fear of rejection also plays a role in that, because we're basically not allowing ourselves to be rejected by other people. So we reject ourselves to not even feel or go through the process of what that may feel like. And then there's also the enemy of comparison. It is not you versus anyone else. It's you versus you. Our focus should be on becoming a greater version of ourselves. Comparison steals joy, our own joy. And there's always someone that's more successful, more accomplished, or more advanced in the creative practice than you. And I don't mean that in a sense of arrogance or in a sense of putting down what we create, uh, within our creative works. That's just the fact that anytime that you succeed, anytime that you grow, and anytime that you evolve, there's always going to be people, and we're talking about the standards of what people culturally, in some aspects, go about. We're talking about money and streams and fame, and we're talking about music, for example. There's always going to be someone on a higher level. So anytime there's a level of success that you have, even though you continue to grow, if you compare yourself to other people, there's always going to be someone above you. But what does that do? That is going to erode confidence. That's going to create frustration because there's no other way to go other than the fact that what's wrong with me if I can't get above this person or that person or this situation or that situation. When that's not the healthiest way to think about it, because we can never, quote unquote, be at the top of everything. But if we improve incrementally within ourselves, if we just take one step forward from where we were before and improving on our creative works to get better and better and better, then that's something that we can be proud of. That's something that we can, have honor in. That's also something that, we can take as a building block to continue to build our confidence and build our trust in ourselves. Comparison, it really has the potential to drain your confidence and reduce your faith in what you can achieve. And it provides space for you to focus on someone else and what you don't have. And that's the enemy of comparison. It takes away your focus. So if you're focusing on what other people are doing, how they're achieving, how they're growing in comparison to you, then it takes the onus off you to be able to look within and look within your own creative practice and see how you can improve to be better for you. And I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to be inspired or to be energized by what other people do, but to make a direct comparison between what you do and what someone else does, and then to evaluate in comparison to that, like who you are and your abilities and what you bring to the table, I think that's a dangerous path to go down. So there's something that plays a role with these two elements that I want to touch on when it comes to the fear of rejection and the enemy of comparison. Something that's been more of a popular term over the past couple of years, and a newer term that I've been introduced to over the past couple of years, entitled imposter syndrome. So by definition, it's an ongoing fear that you're going to be found out, seen as incompetent, or unable to repeat the success of the past. There was a LinkedIn study back in 2022 that found that 85% of professionals, creators included, deal with imposter syndrome, most notably those within the creative industry, as a personal expression. So the personal expression is deep rooted within the foundations of our completed works. So we're more vulnerable when we're doing our creative works to the idea of imposter syndrome, because in a creative space, you're unloading who you are creatively. You're bringing out your creative practice, and it's personal. It's something that is tapped into the deep reservoirs of the soul. And when you're in that space, what does that do? You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to be exposed. People are allowed to see you. So if they can see you, that's a vulnerable place to be in. And with imposter syndrome, the goal is not to get rid of fear. It is to be strengthened and encouraged to move past your fear to still execute the creative idea. So one way that I like to think about it is the work works. The more we see ourselves complete what we've told ourselves, the greater the confidence we build over time to continue in our courage to execute ideas. So just for a transparent moment, just like this podcast, I could easily look at it and say, oh, I messed up there. I had an issue here and I can improve better there. But the work is working on me, meaning that the more we do our creative works, the more we see ourselves complete our creative works, the better we get over time, the more confidence we build. So it's not about perfection. It's not about getting it right. It's not about getting it right in the eyes of other people. It's about doing and growing and learning, doing, growing, and learning, and doing it over time, repeatedly, over time, and you'll get better as you go. So when you continue to do the work, it serves as a chance to get valuable feedback on your creative practice, to see how people engage with it, and to help you improve and build. So that's number one. There's something about you that you don't believe in. Number two, you believe you don't have enough time. When we find ourselves feeling overwhelmed and feeling like we don't have enough time to complete our creative works, just know that this is not uncommon. This is a lot. This issue is what a lot of people struggle with, and I get it. We have a lot of competing factors going on within our days to that we can look at and say, man, this is draining my time, and that is draining my time, and when am I going to have time to really be creative and do, uh, what's on my heart and execute my creative idea? When you find yourself in this place, there's three questions that I believe you need to ask yourself when you feel like you don't have enough time. Number one, where is my time going now? Two, how much time am I spending on what I've identified? And then three, is where I'm spending my time helping me in completing my creative works? This is a question that brings you into awareness about what you're prioritizing. And then not just what you're prioritizing, you're also identifying what's getting in the way. So you can clearly see where your time is going, where you're spending the most of your time, and is this in alignment with where you want to be in reference to completing your creative works? This is just the reality, though. Everybody has the same 24 hours. But the goal here is two things. Like I said, to understand what's getting in the way and to establish and realign your priorities towards aiming to accomplish your creative practice. So it's about seeing what's getting in the way, doing an audit, if you will, and then reestablishing and realigning your priorities so you can create the space to complete what's important. I mentioned this in a previous podcast before, but I want to bring this book title back up that I believe it is a very impactful and a very great resource. It's called Redeeming Your Time by Jordan Rayner. And I believe that, and I have to go back and look at some of the notes, but just kind of paraphrasing what he was talking about. He talked about in one section of the book mapping out your priorities into four sections. So you map out things that are important and urgent. Those are things that need to be prioritized and completed immediately. And if you can have something you can do in less than 2 to 5 minutes, do it ASAP. Get it done now, because it won't take that much time to do it. You can get it out the way and you can get it out of your mind. He entitled that as an open loop. You can get that taken care of immediately. And then number two, you have things that are important and not urgent. So you can begin to map out and add a plan to those things so you can achieve those goals in a timely and effective manner. So we have things that are important, but they're not urgent right away. We just want to put a strategy and a plan to execute in those important things that will be urgent, in the near future. But we want to kind of, put that plan in place and put ourselves in a position to be successful in completing said thing that can push our creative practice forward. And then we have things that are not important and urgent. I know that sounds kind of oxymoronic, but those are things that require you to assist others. Unforeseen priorities that come up outside of your control. I think the important thing is you have to discern and figure out what's worth your time and then what you need to let go. Because there are things that will get in the way. There's things that are outside of our control that we can't control that will happen to us. And then we have to discern, should I break my time and break away from doing said thing to do, to help someone here? Or where can I find time to help someone in a particular space? And the way I like to look at it is, you treat your neighbors, you treat yourself. You love your neighbors, you love yourself. So you have to look at the totality of the situation, and it's up to you as an adult to make that judgment call. One thing I would one thing I would suggest though is to do something what I've learned, and it's called fruit inspection. So again, it's okay to help others, but understand someone's crisis is not your priority. So that's why we must discern what interruptions should be addressed, and then when interruptions are a pattern of behavior. So the things that are in pattern form that's interrupting us and causing us not to be able to complete our creative works. So if we have that one friend that's always calling us and trying to reach out to us and get us to do things that's breaking us away from our creative practice, then we have to ask ourselves, like, should I be helping this person or talking to this person in this moment? Or what boundaries should I have in place um, that I have to enforce, to be able to have the space to complete my creative works? Because again, someone's crisis is not your priority, so it's going to take strong discernment to figure out when to break away and help, and then when things are just patterns of behavior. And then there's things that are not important and not urgent. If it's not important and it's not urgent, I advise you to just get rid of it, because it's something that it's what I would like to call busy work. It's work that's not working. So if it's not important and not urgent, again, it's going to take you discerning that for yourself, get rid of it, and get that open loop out of your head. So here's the unspoken roadblock to this when we think about feeling like we don't have enough time as a creative. This is just the God honest truth, especially if you're an entrepreneur who's just at the beginning stages and building up your practice. We juggle many hats. We work many different roles within our business. If you're an artist, you're probably also the promoter, the project manager, the social media manager. You create the assets. You do everything pretty much yourself. You're a solopreneur. So this is limiting by itself. You know, while the idea of wearing too many hats is is not necessarily warranted, sometimes we have to do what we need to do, and we have to step in and play these different roles. And sometimes it could be a lack of good time management, and those things may appear to be responsible for from us struggling to complete our creative works. But the honest truth is that we must accept the fact that we're a limited resource, and as human beings, we can only complete so much creatively. So we have to give up the idea that we have to do everything at all times within our creative practice. We can't do everything. So we have to get a realization of that now, to know that we have limits and we can only do so much. But this sets us up for the next thing. Once we accept this fact, we begin to establish priorities within our creative practice. So we don't overpromise and underdeliver in our creative works. This also gives us a revelation of the value and importance of scaling through people. You want to map out your creative processes so you can identify and articulate what's being done in the event that you're able to hire someone in the near future to complete said task to free up your time. So this is where vulnerability also kicks in. We have to let people know that we need help. And within a business and creative practice, obviously when you hire someone, there's salaries involved, there's stipulations involved, all of those good things. But in the creative industry, chances are, starting out, you're operating in community. So there's other creatives around you that are good in certain areas, that you're not. They're strong in those areas, and you're not, and you're strong in areas that they're not strong in. This is when you have to combine resources. This is when you have to be vulnerable. This is when you have to reach out and ask people for help in said areas. Whatever area that you're weak in, that you need assistance with. Because by doing that, you allow someone else to step in and help you to free up more time so you can be more impactful in your creative practice. So that's number 2. And then number 3, we're waiting on the perfect circumstances to begin executing our creative ideas. I want to say this, and I want to look dead in the camera when I say it. Perfection is an illusion. It's an illusion. You'll never have it all together. No one does. Perfection is impossible because we're imperfect people living in an imperfect world, like my pastor would say. Many of us wait for the perfect moment, the perfect funding, the right team, or the perfect life conditions to begin executing our creative ideas and bringing them to life. Completing and releasing our creative works is actually how we get better and more confident over time. Finding the courage to take imperfect action. That's where the power is. You don't need to have it all together before you begin. The work itself teaches you how to improve along the way if you're willing to learn the lesson. You can utilize these lessons learned to improve on your creative works and processes. Start before you feel ready. Begin with the resources you have now and scale up in quality later. Whew. That one is probably one of the most challenging ones that most creators struggle with. And this is just from experience, and this is also what the data shows. There's never going to be a perfect situation. And because in the creative space, a lot of creatives can articulate and know in their mind what they want to do in terms of how they see the vision, how they see the creative work coming to life, how they see the impact, and how they want to execute it. But the problem is, from a resource standpoint, chances are you probably don't have all of those components in place. So you're looking for the right camera to capture the right content. You're looking for the right studio equipment to produce the right music. You're looking for the right fabric to create the right fashion pieces. And if you're waiting and you're looking for the right pieces to begin, and you're not dealing with what you have now, what you have at your disposal, that is a way that you can shortchange yourself from moving forward and improving along the way. And then allowing the work that you create now to set you up for the type of work you want to create later. We have to start with what we have. No one has it all together. I remember when I started producing music, I had an MPC, the MPC 2000 XL. That's all I had. Now I've evolved to using Ableton, the MPC Renaissance, the SP303, Arturia, the Moog Grandmother, the Korg MS-20. I built my studio space over time. But when I first started out, I had the MPC. That's what I had to mess with. That's what I had to cook with. I had to start there and then trust God that everything else will come together later. Because when you put out that work and when you put out that creative idea as is, that is what brings in the attention, the resources, to be able to allow you to learn from what you did, but also allow other people to start gravitating towards you and adding to that practice and collaborating with you in that way. So you want to find excitement and joy at simply starting with what you have. Fear of starting small tends to make creatives stall in moving forward and executing their creative ideas. Creators falsely believe that more resources will automatically lead to better execution and completing the creative works, or automatically improve the quality of the creative works. If we don't learn how to use or appreciate what we have now, we will not be able to appreciate and execute our ideas with more resources later and more effectively. So here's an axiom I want to present to you. Appreciating what you have now makes divine room for what you're hoping for to come forth later. Again, Using what you have now sets you up to appreciate and love what you use in the future. So there's one thing that I want to touch on that has kind of been a concept that's also been included in this whole perfection, this creative perfection attitude, which is entitled perfection paralysis. It's a state where someone's pursuit of flawlessness leads to their inability to start and complete tasks due to the constant worry and fear of making mistakes or failing to meet unrealistic standards. Multiple research studies shows that progress over perfection is the key driver of long-term creative process. And progress is simply defined as taking consistent, repetitive, and realistic steps towards completing your creative works. It's logical and encouraged to develop a realistic timeline and deadline in completing your creative idea. But however, you must not treat your timeline and your deadline as something definitive without room for error, our imperfections, and factors that extend beyond our control. Treating our timeline and deadline as something rigid, inflexible, and permanent sets us up for disappointment, frustration, and feeling discouraged from completing our creative works, because we'll feel as if we failed by not executing our creative idea in the deadline that, more than likely, we've made up in our own head. Whew. So as a creative, when you have a timeline, you have a deadline, you have things that you want to have done at a specific time, it is perfectly fine, and I would encourage you to set the time and set the date and when you want something done. But you have to make room for issues. You have to make room for life happening. You have to make room for unforeseen circumstances, because if you don't do that, you're setting yourself up to be frustrated, angry at the fact that you can't complete said creative work. You have to be flexible, and you have to love the process, because something that may not get completed at a certain time or deadline may be for a reason. And that's when you have to let go of control. That's when you have to trust God. That's when you have to step out of the process and step out of the way and let things happen naturally and in the way it should be. Now, that doesn't mean, again, you do things haphazardly or without structure. It just means that there's no guarantee that whatever you're working on is going to finish at the time in which you intend. We just aim for it. And then we let God allow us to be able to finish the creative work when it's time and when it's in season. So the deadline is just simply for us to aim for, us to shoot for, but it's not for something for us to grab hold to and to treat it as law and to treat it as something that if it doesn't happen at that time, then, I'm discouraged and frustrated. I'm throwing out everything I've done creatively as a result of that. So how do we become the person who can execute the creative idea today? Number one, you have to love and accept who you are, the way God made you to be. You have to establish confidence and trust in what God placed inside of you creatively. You have to accept your imperfections and human limitations. There is no such thing as a perfect creative work. And as a reminder, again, perfection is an illusion. And third, the most important thing that I think is relevant here is do not break your own word. Don't overcommit and underdeliver. Accept the MVCW process. Develop the minimum viable creative work. This is what builds faith and confidence that you can complete said creative works as you continue to scale and build up over time. So instead of doing an album or an EP, just do one song. Instead of building out a full-fledged fashion collection, begin with just one t-shirt design. And instead of doing a full-length feature film, just start with a short, 2 to 5 minutes. Start with something that's reasonable and start with something that you can take action on today to see yourself completing and finishing your works with confidence and belief and with trust. I just want to remind you, you already have everything you need. You have everything you need at your disposal to start today. We need your creative works in the world because what we do changes the world for the better. Your creative work may be the very work that blesses the world in a way that we can't even imagine. Do your good works. Don't let disbelief get in the way, the need to be perfect get in the way, and the illusion of not having enough time hold you back. Trust and believe. You got this, man. You can do it. I can't wait to see what you created. I can't wait to see what you're creating now, and I can't wait to see what you release in the future. I just want to leave you with that. I appreciate and thank you for the time and energy you gave me on this podcast. See you back here next week, man. I'm Neek. Be blessed.